Good morning students, welcome to the day 2 session. In the last day 1 session we have learned about what force is and what kind of efforts has been done to apply force like push, pull. Okay, and we also have discussed about the classification of forces like contact forces and field forces. Now in this session 2, in the day 2 session, let's discuss in detail about contact forces and field forces. Now, here are some forces which comes under contact forces. Number 1 is muscular force, number 2 is friction force, then comes normal and tension force. These all 4 forces are called as contact forces. As discussed before, in all these 4 cases, in all these 4 forces, here the physical contact between the two interacting objects will be there, and because of which force will be exerted. So that's why we call these forces as contact force. Coming to the field forces, in these forces magnetic force, electrostatic force and gravitational forces comes under field forces. Field forces can also be called as non-contact force. Coming to the first topic in detail, let's discuss about the first force, muscular force. Muscular force is that force. It is also a type of contact force. Here the force will be exerted on an object by using our muscles. For example, let's smile. When we smile, our cheek muscles expand. When I lift the bag, my arm muscles will be exerting some force on it. So let us discuss some daily life examples like kicking the ball. If I want to kick the ball, I have to use my leg muscles. If I want to smile, I have to use my cheek muscles. Now, if I want to, as the COVID-19 is going, here we are advised to do namaste. So in order to, so now I am standing like this. If I want to do namaste, I have to do like this. Here my muscles, hand muscles are involved in doing namaste. So here there are many such activities in everyday life where we use our body muscles to exert some force. So here such forces, such contact force where we use our body muscles to exert force, that force is called as muscular force. So here come some examples like brushing, bathing, lifting the dumbbell, many more. Okay, now let's go to the second force called as frictional force. Frictional force is that force which opposes the motion of a body on the surface. For example, let me say I am moving on this ground surface, floor surface. Now my feet, my legs are in contact with the ground. Here or take another example like let's take my car is moving on the road. My car tires and this road surface are in contact. Now the tires are exerting some force on the surface of the road. I say the type of force exerted there, I can call it as contact force because there is physical contact between the two surfaces, that is the tire surface and the road surface. Now when the car is moving like this, because I am applying some force on the steering and I am moving in this direction, and there exists a force which I call it as frictional force. This frictional force acts in the direction opposite to the motion of the object. Here this force is acted to oppose the motion, and I call this force exerted by the surface of the road as frictional force. So now I can define frictional force as the frictional force is defined as a force which resists the motion of a body on the surface by the surface on which it is moving. Example, as the car is moving on this road, the car is moving in this direction, let us assume. Now, the road surface will exert an opposite force in the opposite direction of the motion of the car. This force, I call it as frictional force. Here, there are several other examples for the frictional force. See, usually we observe falling on the muddy, wet surface. Coming season is rainy season. Usually we observe when we walk on the wet, muddy roads, we fall, we slip off. Why do you think we slip? During the house cleaning, as you have done along with your mothers, on the soapy surfaces, we usually fall, we slip off. Why do you think we slip off? Because there is no grip, or I can say, as we have to use the physical science term as there is no friction. Always, when two surfaces are, when one surface is moving on the other surface, the motion of the body is in this direction. The surface on which the body is moving exerts some opposite force. If the friction is there, then only we can move. For example, if I am standing on this road, I am walking on the road, I can walk only if there is any friction acting or resisting my motion. Is it clear for you? Or I can say, if I can hold this pen only if there is friction between the surface of my hands, then only I can write. So from this you can observe, friction is important, but if it is more friction is there, you cannot move. For example, you have an experience of moving on a bicycle on rough roads. On rough roads, you can't go easily on the rough roads because it resists your motion. And on the slopey roads, without pedaling also your cycle can move. What do you think? What is happening there? On the slopey roads, on the slope roads, inclined roads, you can move without pedaling your cycle. It means that the friction is less. So, friction can be more, friction can be less. By these examples, you might have already understood that frictional force will be more on rough surfaces and less on smooth surfaces. If the friction is very less, you slip off. That's the reason why you slip off on the mud, wetty roads. And that's the reason your cycle will not move easily on the rough, rocky roads. Is it okay? So, frictional force is necessary in our everyday life to hold the pen, to write, to walk, to jump, to run, anything. Anything is possible. Otherwise, to move your vehicles on the road, your frictional force is necessary. If frictional force is not there, nothing is possible. If you move your vehicle on the road, your vehicle will undergo some accidents. So, frictional force is good, as well as if the frictional force is more, you cannot move easily. Like on the rough surfaces, you cannot move very easily. That's the reason frictional force is necessary to some extent, and it is also bad if you have more. So I can say frictional force is good as well as evil. Coming to the next, normal force. Normal force is that force. See, usually you might have listened about normal, the word normal. Normal is casual, but that is not here in the physical science. The term normal indicates that something which is acting perpendicular to the surface. For example, let me keep this object on this table. You all know very well that if I keep this in the air, if I keep this object in the air, it would definitely fall down because of the Earth's gravitational pull. But if I keep the same object on the table, this object has been supported by the table. Here, what do you think why the object is not falling down? Though the gravitational force is acting, see children, this is my table surface. I have kept one book on the table. If I keep my book in the air, it would definitely fall down. But here, that situation is not here in this case because my object is on the table. It has been supported supported by the table. What do you think? What is happening in this case? We all know, it's clear that this book is being pulled by Earth's gravitational force, but it is not falling down. If the gravitational force is acting on the body, the object should fall down, but that is not happening here because the same equal amount of force is acting in the upward direction, which is exerted by this table, and I call this force as normal force because this force is acting normal. Normal here indicates perpendicular to the surface. Here, what is the surface which is the surface here is a table surface. The table surface is exerting some perpendicular force to the surface. The direction of the force is perpendicular to the surface. So here, this normal force and your gravitational force is being balanced here. That's the reason why your book is not falling down. So this force is called as normal force. Coming to the tension force. What is tension force? You might have observed about, you might have done some, okay, you might be playing with a ball, right? You will be hanging with a string and when you hang, let us take a rubber ball which is hanged with the help of a string. When you hang the rubber ball with a string, the ball will be pulled downwards due to the Earth's gravitational force. But here in this case, we don't observe the ball will fall down. We observe that the string which is tied to the ball will be pulling the ball upwards against the gravitational force. This force has been exerted in the upward direction by the string, which will be moving up. That is exerted, that force is exerted by your string, and the string, what force it is exerting, I call it as tension. So tension force is that force which acts upwards against the gravitational force. So, and this is all possible. See, we have discussed 4 different forces here. In all the 4 cases, one thing is common is, in all the 4 forces, the objects, the 2 interacting objects are in physical contact. If there is any physical contact between 2 interacting objects, then only I can say the forces are called as contact forces. So, our topic is over, children. So, let us revise once again. Here we have discussed in our session, we have discussed the types of contact forces. That forces are muscular forces, frictional forces, normal force and the tension force. Muscular forces are those forces with the help of our body muscles we exert some force, or examples like picking the ball, lifting the dumbbell, lifting up your bag and all. So here we use our muscles in exerting the force, so I call this force as muscular force. Coming to the frictional force is that force which acts or which resists the motion of the body on the surface. And coming to the normal force, the word normal itself is a perpendicular to the surface. Normal force is that force when it will support, suppose when I keep the book on the table, the book has to be fall down because of the Earth's gravitational force, but it doesn't happen because your table will be supporting. Because this table, the surface on which the book is placed, will exert some pressure perpendicular to the surface, and because of which the body doesn't fall down. So that force which is acting perpendicular to the surface is called as normal force. Coming to the fourth force, it's tension. Tension force is nothing but when an object is hanged with the help of a string, the object is pulled by the Earth's gravitational force, but here at the same time the force is exerted in upward direction also with by this string which is used to hang this ball. So the force exerted by this string is called as tension force. Here is your homework. You have to write in your notes about what is contact contact force, what are the forces falls under contact force, and describe them with the help of the examples. Thank you.